The budget presentations are structured in a way that we'll have 4 presentations between February 12th and March 25th. Tonight is the second installment in our series of budget presentations. The first presentation was delivered on February 12th, and that was just a general overview of what the budget is, our tax cap, state aid, debt service, reserve funds. This evening, we'll be hearing a presentation from Ms. Sanfilippo on general support, employee benefits, facilities, and transportation. At our March 18th Board of Education meeting, there will be a presentation on athletics, co-curricular, instruction, general and special education, and technology. And then on March 25th, we'll take everything that we hear, and we'll hear a lot of requests of the budget, a lot of demands on the budget, whether they're unfunded mandates that are required of us, whether they're programmatic in nature, or some other enhancements that we're looking to make to our school district. Those will all be included in these presentations, and on March 25th, I'll deliver the superintendent's budget presentation. At this point, it's referred to as the superintendent's budget. And that is the superintendent's budget until March 25th, at which point I give my final presentation. It's then turned over to the Board of Education for consideration, and then on the April 15th meeting, the budget would be adopted by the board with any modifications to the superintendent's budget as presented, and then that becomes the district's budget that we will put in front of taxpayers on May 21st is the budget vote and trustee election for this year. It's always the third Tuesday in May. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ms. Sanfilippo, who will present on general support, employee benefits, facilities, and transportation. As Ms. Sanfilippo is making her way to the podium, what I'll share with members of our community is all of our budget presentations are recorded. They're posted to our website. They're fully accessible with any detail that I think the community would like to see and would be interested in seeing. It's all up on our website. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We want the process to be as transparent as possible, as we'd like you to come out to our meetings so that you can hear about the budget presentations in person. But if you're not able to do so, please do visit our website so that you can have all the information that's available on our budget. So Ms. Sanfilippo, I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Hatter. Thank you, everyone. So tonight, as Dr. Hatter mentioned, closer? Okay, sorry. So tonight, the areas we'll be covering in this presentation are general support, facilities, operations and maintenance, employee benefits, and transportation. It should be noted that all numbers presented tonight are tentative and may change as we complete the budget process. As Dr. Hatter just mentioned, the board will adopt the final budget in April. So the first area we're going to cover tonight is general support. General support covers all departments in central administration. That includes the Board of Education and the district clerk, the Office of the Superintendent and Public Relations and Communications, the business office, auditing and legal, and human resources. Also, to name a few, there are a few other ones included as well. Some of the impacts this year for the budget include increases for mandatory legal ads for the annual budget vote. A couple of years ago, the state adopted a law that requires us to run all legal ads in both English and in Spanish, and those costs have increased for us. There are also increases in superintendent hearings, which are student disciplinary hearings. There is a salary adjustment included in the budget for 61 non-represented employees district-wide, but they are noted on the business administration line, so it's just contained in one line. There's also a reallocation of our student information system from instructional software to central data processing. You'll see that number as well. And there's about a 20% increase in our general property and liability, insurance premiums, and deductibles. So this chart identifies all those lines that are in general support and the increases per each department. It should be noted that all the categories include salaries, equipment, contractual services, BOCES expenses, and supplies. So they're rolled up into department lines. Overall, the proposed budget for general support is about $3.8 million. Last year it was about $3.5 million, so that's a $300,000 increase. But again, that increase includes some reallocations from other areas of the budget. including about $117,000 in the central data processing. Unallocated insurance includes a 20% increase in insurance premiums, less some reallocations out to other areas for security and cybersecurity COSERs. The next area we'll cover is the area of facilities and operations and maintenance. So an overview of our facilities is that our operations and maintenance staff clean and maintain over 600,000 square feet of buildings throughout the district. All of our buildings are identified there with their square footage and the year that they were built. It should be noted that the French Hill Elementary School currently houses our UPK program and other child care programs that generate revenue for the district. Our grounds department maintains over 100 acres of property throughout the district, including playgrounds, athletic fields, parking lots, and walkways. This is an overview of the staffing of our operations and maintenance department. We currently have 1 director of facilities, 2 maintenance forepersons, 1 for buildings, 1 for grounds. We have 1.4 clerical support FTEs. We have 4.0 district-wide maintenance mechanics. We have 5.0 district-wide groundskeepers, 2.0 head custodians, 5.0 senior custodians, 18.0 custodians, and 19.0 cleaners for a total of 47.4 total FTEs, and we are not projecting or budgeting any changes in FTEs for next year. This is the budget summary for the O&M department. You can see here that the O&M budget is down by over $250,000, and we'll get into the detail of that on the next slide. Most areas have been reduced except for fuel and the natural gas amount. We are still carrying a contingency in this area, and we may eventually reduce it, but for right now, we're going to keep it in the budget. So some of the considerations for the budget for O&M for next year. You'll see the salary line, there were decreases in the salary lines. That's mostly overtime and a reduction in the use of substitutes. On the equipment line, we are planning on replacing a 2002 Dodge Rack truck. We're also planning on purchasing some new cleaning equipment to use district-wide. Contractually, that number has been reduced based on a rebidding or a new contract with refuse removal recycling contract. Under utilities, our electricity rates are down. However, as I mentioned, our fuel contingency will remain in place at this point. The biggest reductions came in our maintenance lines. Those are for various projects throughout the district and things that we've accomplished this year. We retubed 2 high school boilers during this year. We replaced some water meters at 4 of our buildings, and we installed blue light strobes throughout the district. So those projects have been accomplished or near completion for this year. So we were able to reduce the budget for those items for next year. In our transfer to capital line, we are budgeting $390,000 for transfer to capital for next year. And what we plan to do with that is the replacement of our HVAC units at the high school over the library and guidance that are end of life. The next area we're going to look at is of employee benefits. So employee benefits consist of pension, taxes, workers' comp, and some other areas that we'll go through. The employees' retirement system, we call it ERS, the rate is increasing from 13.1% to 15.2%. The teachers' retirement system, that rate is increasing from 9.76% to 10.02%. For Social Security tax, the FICA max is increasing from $160,600 to $168,600. Our workers' compensation rate is increasing by 3.7%. Life insurance and unemployment are remaining unchanged at this point. Our health insurance premiums are increasing by 5%. Medicare Part B standard reimbursement is increasing from $164.90 per month to $174.70 per month. And our union welfare benefits at this point, there's no rate change. It's based on the number of employees. So the detail of the budget summary is here. You can see that those rates translate into, for ERS, about a $250,000 increase on the line. For teachers' retirement, it's about a $200,000 increase on the line. Social Security and Medicare is going up about $53,000. Workers' compensation about $9,000. Health insurance $600,000, and welfare benefits about $54,000. It should be noted that the amounts represented here are preliminary and will change once the budget process is completed. These numbers represent a rollover budget of the current employees and will increase if additional staff is added to the final budget. Last on our list is transportation. So an overview of our transportation program is that we transport over 3,000 students daily in district and to private and parochial schools in accordance with New York State education law and our Board of Education policy. We currently utilize 71 vehicles, 28 66-passenger buses, 32 30-passenger vans, 7 8-passenger vehicles, 4 wheelchair-accessible vans, and we utilize 26 monitors. Most vehicles complete either 2 or 3 tiers every day. Routes are designed by the district utilizing transportation routing software. We are currently conducting an efficiency study to find additional savings. This also includes athletic and field trips that the district provides. And we, for the first time in over 20 years, the district put out a transportation bid, which we opened on last week on February 28th. And those numbers will impact the budget for next year. So overall, the transportation budget summary, obviously the big increases are to the trip lines. The major increases in athletic co-curricular field trips, approximately $103,000. And that's not just because of the rate, that is because we are doing more co-curricular trips and field trips. So it's not just a function of the rate that's increasing. Our home to school transportation is increasing by about $445,000. That's with the new rates that were bid by the transportation contractor for next year. So overall, we're looking at about $558,000 increase, or 6.8% increase budget to budget. So the budget presentation schedule, Dr. Hatter had mentioned earlier. Our next presentations are on March 18th for athletics co-curricular, instruction, gen ed and special ed and technology. March 25th, superintendent's budget presentation. April 15th, the board will adopt the budget. May 13th, we have the required mandated budget hearing, and on May 21st is the budget vote. So that's it. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I don't like all those numbers, though.
There are a lot.
Ron, did you want to say anything before I ask for questions?
No, please.
All right, I'll start with Pete.
On the,
Can you talk into the microphone?
so the reallocation, that $300,000, that actually came from another line somewhere else in the budget. It wasn't that went up by $300,000.
Right, 117 or 111,000 came from another line in the
Okay.
budget, yeah.
And really just around fuel and gas. So I got to believe this year, based on what we budgeted last year, we're paying less for fuel at this time of the year than we were.
Right,
But I see that there's an increase to next year. I know you said it's a contingency.
yeah.
How realistic do you think that number is going to be where it's budgeted versus looking at what we paid this year versus what we can budget?
Yeah, so that's why we're kind of just hedging on that for the moment. We would like to finish this heating season, see where we are, and see how much we used. I do believe we're using more fuel than oil than gas, because those prices are more favorable right now. But we would like to see where we end up for this heating season before we make a final decision about where we're going to be for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Catalina?
Hi, yes. Can you talk a little bit more about the efficiency study
Sure.
that you're conducting?
So several months ago, I think it was November maybe timeframe, the district put out an RFP for transportation consultants. And so we hired it's Transportation Advisory Services to come in. They did the bid for us, and they're also at the same time conducting an efficiency study. So we've provided them with a lot of data and a lot of information. The priority was to get the bid out the door, because the longer you wait, the higher your numbers are going to be coming back. But so we expect to have a draft this week of the efficiency study with suggestions, recommendations where the district may be able to find efficiencies. Once we get that report from them, we'll review it, and we'll see if some things are easily implemented for next year or may take time for us to really go through that. We may need some policy changes, or we may need to just take our time in implementing some changes. But the goal is to reduce our overall transportation budget.
Thank you.
Mike?
So something we've focused on over the years is obviously maintaining our buildings and grounds. And in looking at this, it says that there is a reduction in the line item, but then it also mentions something about the project codes. So are we allocating less, or did we move it around? Can you kind
For
of
the
clarify
maintenance
that a little?
projects, is
Yeah.
that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So we're actually allocating less for the maintenance projects for next year. So generally, we do just keep some money in the codes for unexpected things, but last year we planned for specific projects to be done, which have been done. And now with the bond project that's been passed, some maintenance things have been rolled into that as well. So those monies just weren't needed for next year, we don't believe, to complete some very specific projects. But there are monies allocated in case we have emergencies that come up, and regular routine maintenance.
Okay.
Okay.
Cheryl?
I have a question on the O&M part of the presentation. You referenced salaries and a decrease in overtime and use of substitutes. How do you forecast that? I mean, I guess in other words, if we've used the overtime this year, we've had our use of substitutes. How do we go about forecasting how we decrease that in the coming year?
So we're really just looking at our prior history. So last year we had actually taken our overtime budget up because that's the way we were trending. But for this year, it looks like, we've made some changes, we've made some adjustments. We're trending much lower than we have in the past. So we're taking that savings into the budget for next year. The same thing with substitutes. We look back at what does that line look like for the past few years, and it just hasn't been at that level that we were budgeting, so we decided to take that down as well.
Thank you.
And part of that, if I can just piggyback, part of that is there's a known entity and there's an unknown entity. So the known entity is with regard to staffing. So as we have vacancies, or if there's an employee who's injured on the job, who's collecting a pay, and we hire a substitute or overtime to fill in that work, that'll certainly escalate the line. But then the unknown piece is how challenging the winter is, and that's a part where that, for the most part, is overtime, because the storms never happen during business hours. They're typically overnight. They're typically on Sundays or on holidays, or whatever the case may be. And our O&M people do a great job in removing snow and preparing the campuses. But those are two factors. There's an unknown piece of weather, but then there's a known piece where if we're short-staffed, we do fill in with either overtime, or we have been operating for the most part at full staff. I think there's one vacancy currently of all the 47 positions that were outlined, 47.4 I think it is. I think there's only one vacancy at this point that's not filled. So it's a combination.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa?
On the co-curricular.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Are you on there?
Okay, now I'm
Okay.
turned on. On the co-curricular trips, there's an increase of 35%, and that shows like year to year. But I know once COVID hit, we had stopped trips. So if you look back at, say, pre-COVID versus now, are we still at a 35% increase in the cost of trips?
I would have to look at that. I would have to see where we are, where we were before COVID. But we definitely are adding more trips. We're going to other places for clubs and Some of them are far away, some of them are in Wisconsin over the summer.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. I would venture to say that our numbers are higher than they were pre-COVID because the school district is funding more in the way of school trips than we had previously. It's not so much the athletic side of it, but in past years, there were some of the programs that the school district wasn't funding, in terms of transportation, whether it was our science research program and having students find their way down to a New York City competition without school transportation. So we've made the decision to fund our programs in terms of their trips and the costs associated with transportation, but also we're offering more clubs. So for example, we had a trip of our aeronautics club out to the World Championship in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. That's a bus trip. That was, I believe, a $17,000 cost for that trip to get the
took the
children
bus to
across
Wisconsin.
the country because the sensitivity of the drone equipment that they were carrying, a bus was more appropriate than a plane, according to the advisors. So yes, we did. We took a bus out to Wisconsin. And a lot of it depends on the number of activities and if our teams do qualify. So we had the good fortune of qualifying for the World Championship, and we wanted obviously to send our students, but that certainly comes with a price tag as well. So there is a little bit of unknown. Will the team qualify again this year? If they do, we certainly want to support them and send them. If they don't, then that transportation line will likely come down a little bit. But for the most part, I think we've taken on more clubs and more programs, and we've taken on the responsibility of transporting the kids, as we should.
Great, thank you.
Lisa, can you talk a little bit about the insurance increases?
I could
There are
talk
a
a
lot.
lot about it, but I won't bore you all with an insurance talk. But so generally in the region, the school district is insured by NYSER, which is a consortium of New York State schools. So we don't use an insurance company. It's school districts insuring other school districts. So we imagine that that's the most efficient way for us to insure. There has been a recent hardening of the insurance market where reinsurance is difficult to purchase. So over the past 2 years, we've seen an increase in insurance premiums because of property losses related to weather events and CVA, Child Victims Act, and Adult Victim Act lawsuits against districts. So the consortium has had to, in order to secure reinsurance, raise our rates and put some more limits on property deductibles and things of that sort. So it's still an ongoing discussion with our insurer. We're having another meeting this week to talk about this. But it is just something that I don't know that can be avoided. We're considering doing an RFP for pricing to other insurance companies, but that's to be determined.
Yvette, can I ask you to go to slide 11, please? Because, Jackie, in that same light, I think it's important to talk about each of these numbers here.
Go ahead.
The first number, you'll look at the bottom line, which is $1.16 million in increases, and I'll tell you that the school district has no bearing over these numbers. You look at the New York State Employee Retirement System, that's a $50,000 increase from year to year. That's something that the school district does not get to vote on. That rate is set, the school district pays it. New York State Teacher Retirement System, again, the school district has no input in that. That rate is set, the school district pays it. We look at the $53,000 in change in Medicare, the $9,000 in workers' comp insurance, even the $600,000 in the health insurance premium. We're part of a consortium of the Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES area that jointly has health insurance through a joint service. That rate is set by the consortium, and the school district is required to pay that increase contractually. Then the welfare benefits, again, contractually. And it's also important to note that this only accounts for existing staff, and it certainly takes into account savings from retirements. Does not take into account new staff who we hire, because those numbers will only tick that 1.16 million up. So these are unfunded for the school district. It's incumbent on the school district to absorb these costs in their operating budget. In an environment where the tax cap is about 1.6 million, we see 1.16 already spent in that regard, and then you have the transportation piece to boot there. So this has been a challenging budget, much of which we don't have control over the variables. So I think that's an important point to really emphasize in this presentation. And slide 11, I think, speaks well to the budget situation that we're in.
I get it. I'm going to go back to Pete.
With regards, the consortium, is that technically that we're self-insured? Like, is it
Yes,
So
yeah.
it's not like we're going out, they're using that buying power of all the districts, but we're not insured through Blue Cross and Blue Shield or whoever it
Which,
is.
are you talking the health insurance?
The
or
health insurance.
The health insurance,
Yes.
right.
So the consortium is technically a
It's
group
us,
that's
again.
self-insured.
Right, we're self-insured
correct?
and we purchase reinsurance, and that's the only way it's really insured. But yes, it's, they're
Whereas
paying.
if we went out
yeah.
to one of the big three.
But we do have Aetna. We have Aetna in the school
No,
district.
I understand that, but the Aetna is the insurance administrator of our.
Right, correct.
But technically, the consortium is insuring.
covering
us.
the
Yes.
losses.
It's covering us.
Yep.
So if we just went out on our own to Aetna by ourselves, we'd probably pay double the amount that we would be paying.
You're absolutely right. So I'm not happy about the 600,000, but the alternative is much
And
higher.
the only reason I say that, Ron, is because my company's self-insured, and we went away from that whole thing just because of what it is. And we're a little small thing.
No, but you're 100% right. If we did separate, the rates would be even higher than what we're looking at on the screen.
I did have one other question with regards to transportation. It showed the a 5.8% increase. That is based on the new bids we're getting? Or
Yes.
it is?
It is the pricing that's applied to our transportation program as it exists right now.
Right now?
So we just changed the pricing using the same number of buses, same number of
Right,
monitors,
okay.
and that's what the increase would be.
Catalina? No? Mike? Cheryl?
I'm good, thanks.
Lisa?
I have one other, a number that jumped out at me, and that was the central data processing, an 878%
Yeah.
increase. Could you explain what that's about?
Yeah, that's mostly because of a reallocation. So there was our student information systems, which is about $117,000, was coded to our instructional software codes. And it's really non-instructional software. It's for administration of student information. So I felt it was more appropriately classified in central data processing. So that's just a reallocation. Most of that line is a reallocation.
So the line that you took it from will have a similar decrease?
Yes, or will be backfilled with something else.
Okay.
Be used up by something else.
Yes.
Anybody else? No? Thank you. I hope the next one has better news.
I don't know, but we'll see.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
Appreciate it.